Hello everyone, thanks for coming along tonight. Today's session is a little bit about how we transition from a winter of training into a summer of training and or racing, and what things you might want to think about as you go through that little journey. May is often a quiet time for running. I know we had the Hackney Half yesterday and that was full on, there's lots going on. But it can often be a quiet month for running because obviously loads of people will train for spring marathons, in particular London, and you get to sort of May, a few weeks after the marathon, when you've taken care of your recovery, all that sort of stuff, and you kind of go, what am I going to do now? Oh, it's sunny, so I'm going to go to the pub, and I'm going to go to a barbecue, or I'm going to go away for a weekend, and other things come along, which changes priority and quietens down the focus on running. But not to wish our lives away as athletes. What we tend to experience is you come off too far or too quickly in May and June. The autumn comes around much faster than you think. Just for context really, February was as far away to us now as August is coming, but February feels like a lifetime away. So August is around the corner effectively, and beyond August it's only a few more months and then it's Christmas. So this time of year I always say the same thing, which is it's going to be Christmas before you know it, even though the sun is shining and there's loads to do. So it's just worth thinking and taking stock of where you are effectively in your training year. I can see one person run the London Marathon. Did anybody else run the London Marathon? The London Marathon? Molly, did you run the London Marathon? Shall I say what happened at the end of the London Marathon? So at the end of the London Marathon, I finished. I ran terribly. I was really seriously undertrained. I was cramping from mile 18. I'd never cramped before. Was never sure I was going to finish the race until I actually finished the race. I got across the finish line thinking, oh Christ, my body is all over the place. And somebody starts tugging at my vest. And it's Molly finishing right behind me in a similar state of distress. So we kind of, ended up looking after each other. Anyway, it's worth just touching on London for a minute, because I know that there's lots of chat about what happened in London and the heat and all that sort of stuff. Just to finish off, I suppose, our spring marathon season. And I remember in this session, we had a session here when we talked about preparing for the London Marathon, and I remember distinctly saying, I think we're due a hot one. It never really got as hot as I thought it would originally, but then on the day it got seriously hot. So my experience of it was, the forecast suggested that it was going to be okay for the first couple of hours and then get warmer. My experience was on the start line, where I was expecting it to be relatively cool. It was hot, and I was sweating on the start line, thinking, oh no, what's going to happen here? And I think what happened is it caught everybody out, because once you're on the start line and it's hot, if you've got a couple of days notice or even a week's notice that you know it's going to be hot, you can prepare and you can change your strategy and you can think about it. But when you're on the start line and it's hot, and it's unexpectedly so, nobody's going to change their plan. And nobody's going to go, oh yeah, it's a bit hot, so I'm going to back off my pacing. So everybody went for what they said they were going to aim for, and some people, myself included, came a cropper as a result of that. I think normally what I'd expect to see in the London Marathon for most athletes would be an average positive split of around about 3%. So that means you run the second half 3% slower than you run the first half. That's the average. Obviously some people run better being faster in the second half than the first, and some people have horrible days and crash and burn, all that kind of stuff. So normally it would be about 3%. This time around it was about 4%. So it's quite, and I know that sounds like a small difference, but actually that's quite a big difference. So it's quite dramatic, and that's at the sharp end as well. So I think that was looking at stats of the top 500 men, who are probably the most trained, and as with the top 500 women. So the most trained athletes were suffering, which meant clearly everybody else would suffer too. So I think the heat obviously affected everyone. Just as a rule of thumb, and this is appropriate as we're talking about the summer, anything above 15 degrees centigrade will have an impact of around about 5% on race performance. Anything above 20 degrees is likely to have a 10% impact. And London was sort of in that sort of 15 to 20 range. So it had an impact for lots of people. The other thing that I think happened in London this year is I myself had cramp, which I'd never had before. And maybe I'm listening out for that, but I hear a lot of stories about cramp. And what I think happened for lots of people is the super shoes effectively help us run at a quicker pace than our physiology will allow over a 26-mile distance. And it will do that in any condition. But in hot conditions, what that does is it pushes your lactate threshold, or pushes you closer to your lactate threshold, which we spoke about 2 sessions ago, and effectively tips you over it, so that you're now starting to really burn through your carbs and your electrolytes really super fast. And that is going to have an impact on your ability to, your muscles' ability to fire. And of course, we're trying to replace salts as we go, but probably not doing it as quickly as we can. So I think there's sort of almost a triple whammy really. The heat was a surprise on the morning. It was hot, as well as it being a surprise. And the third thing is, I think probably the shoes were enabling us to run faster and burning up energy in a slightly different way than we would normally expect. But for the best trained athletes, temperature doesn't make such a big difference. The people it affects most are the heavier people, so the bigger you are, the more likely it's to affect you, and obviously the least trained you are. So the people who would really have suffered would have been those going out at 11 o'clock on the charity starts, aiming to do 5, maybe 6 hours, and ending up doing 6 to 7. I mean, that's hard. It's interesting, so you come off London and actually all the spring marathons, and the thing I'll say, and a couple of you will have heard me say this, is that there is a period of time after the race where you're in a danger zone. And there's a danger zone for 2 reasons. One, because you've had a good race and you think you're invincible and you want to go and get some more PBs over other distances. And the second is if you've had a bad race and you want to put the record straight and you want to get back to it quickly to amend kind of your own perception of your own ability as an athlete. Now, both of those things are super dangerous because it implies that you're going to get back into racing and training quicker than your body should naturally allow for the intensity of the effort you've put in. And the likely outcome for all of that is either burnout or injury or both. So I think we have to respect the marathon really acutely. They say, the textbooks will say that it's recovery from any race is a day for every mile of the race. So if it's a 5K, 3 miles, you'll be over it in 3 days. For a marathon, it's 26 days. I think 3 weeks is about right for proper recovery. And when I'm coaching, I don't like to see people doing sessions much more than 3 weeks after the race for all of those reasons. Because what tends to happen is our body will build up a whole load of fatigue and muscle damage that we don't necessarily realise until we start moving again, and it kind of accumulates. We create some imbalances. Suddenly our ankle starts hurting on one side than on the other side because your body's still recovering, getting over the effort that you put in. So it takes time to get over. Now the challenge with that is for both those types of people I just described, the person who nailed it and the person that didn't, the challenge is then coming back into racing. What are you going to do? What's your plan? And I think the summer is a really good time to just go, okay, we've done loads of hard road work across the winter and it's been tough in the cold weather and been pounding the streets. I want to do something different now. And the summer presents a few things that are different. The two main things really are you can go to the track or you can go to the trails. You can still do road, but I'll come back to that. And I think where you go and what you do in terms of your performance really depends on where you want to go in the longer run. So if, for example, you think that speed is the thing that you really want to work on and develop at as an athlete, then the track is the place to go. Go shorter distances, go mile, 5K maximum probably. Maybe even if you 800 meters, do something fun, just short and sharp, and work on your speed. If, however, you think strength is something that you wish to develop, then perhaps you go on the trails and go long and slower, get on the hills, get out of London and have some fun. And in both of those things, I think fun is an important component because it's mixing up, trying to do something different. So if you're going to race on the track, have some fun doing it. Chase some PBs, but also chase some people. If you're going to go on the trails, get out and see the world. Have a nice time. Go and see the sunshines, go and see the hills, and try and get yourself into a slightly different mentality. But do so knowing both long-term and short-term what you're trying to achieve. So long-term, where do I want to go? What do I need to work on as an athlete? And short-term, where am I going to have the most fun? What's going to really work for me across this period? And I think when you're doing that, don't just think about your body. Don't just think about what you need to develop in terms of your strength of your legs, your glutes, your back, your quads, your calves, your ankles, whatever it is that you think you need to develop. Think about your brain as well. What does your brain need? If you've been hammering sessions 3 times a week through the winter to try and get yourself ready for a fast road marathon, you've done long sessions, you've done track, and you've done long runs with intensity in there. What do you want to do differently to freshen your brain up so you're not going to get fatigued mentally of repeating the same effort for this period of time before you move into potentially in autumn where you might do something similar or maybe different. The track. The track is an interesting place. So racing on the track is brilliant fun. It makes you feel like you're that lady, even though none of us can run anywhere near as fast as she can run. The track's super fun, it's bouncy, you obviously get to go round multiple times depending on what race you're choosing. And you get to race with other people, but it can be quite an exposing place because you literally can't hide. You know, people are watching you go round and round. And depending on the distance you choose, the level of that exposure increases. So an 800 metres, 2 laps of the track, bash it out as fast as you can. You won't get lapped in 2 laps probably. If you do, you're probably racing against her. And you know, you can have a good time. Once it gets to the 10,000 metres on the track, so from 2 laps to 25 laps, it can be a horribly exposing place to be. And it can be quite daunting as a consequence of that. So you're doing 10,000 metres in the road, you don't worry about, you know, leaving a gap between you and the next person of 100 metres, 200 metres or maybe more. If you're on the track and you suddenly see everybody else disappearing around the bend before you've even got on it, and then you start getting lapped, it can be quite a hard experience. And one of the things that we all do when we race on the track, because of this excitement of being on the track, is we go off too fast. And particularly in the 10,000 metres, and to a certain extent the 5,000 metres as well, it gets to us pretty quickly and we start moving backwards, and it can be quite a horrible experience. So pacing on the track becomes super important. The good news is you've got something to measure pacing by, but it's really easy because you're running laps, so you know exactly where you are. You don't need to look at your watch for distance anymore, you just need to look at the time. There's a lapse from one lap to another. You may even find somebody standing there calling out the lap times, which makes it even easier for you to get round. So it can be a super fun experience. It can also be quite a daunting one. And the only way to really figure it out is to go and try it. And there are lots of options for track racing, but particularly around the mile. So there's a bunch of events for the mile all across London, all across the summer. The mile is 4 laps of the track. You are running as fast as you possibly can in that period of time. And the mile is a brilliant event because it hurts. It hurts a lot, but it's over super fast. So it's a race where you sort of really have to convince yourself that you're going to overcome the pain that you're feeling right now. So once you get to the 4th lap of a mile race, you feel like you can't breathe anymore. You feel, some people say they can taste blood because the body is sending so much blood around as quickly as possible that it gets to places and you end up literally feeling like you can taste it. But it's 1 lap. It's over in a matter of a minute or 2. And that pain period, the mile is amazing because you have that pain period during the last 400 metres or so, and you have that pain period for about a minute afterwards, and then a minute later, you're like, right, I want to go again, because your legs are fine, and your breathing's settled, your heart rate's starting to come down. So what that tells us, once you've experienced the mile once, is actually, yeah, I can really go for this. I can really give this a crack, because I know that I'm going to get over it again pretty quickly afterwards. And the joy with that is it teaches us about how to race longer distances as well. So it teaches us that actually it's going to be all right. This pain bit, we're going to overcome it. It's going to be okay. I can do it in the mile. I can do it for the 5K. And if I can do it for the 5K, I can do it for the 10K. If I can do it for the 10K, I can do it for the half. I can do it for the half. I can do it for the marathon. But it starts with the mile. And obviously, what I said earlier is true. So if it's a day of recovery for every mile that you race, you could probably do another one 2 days later. And that's part of the joy, is you're able to do it loads. And that's what these guys do. The track athletes, they are, they obviously fine tune and peak at the right moments, but they have 3 or 4 of those across a season where they're really going for it. Whereas as longer road runners, we can only do that sort of twice a year. So there's the upside of the mile, and you can extend that to the other distances. Like I say, 5K, 10K tend to become more exposing and trickier, but equally super fun. There used to be that you'd run quicker on the track than on the road, And so there was good opportunities for PBs. However, these days, because of the amazing shoes that are on offer, it tends to be the other way around now, that the road is quicker than the track. So that's something to consider as you make your choices. So there's a little bit about the track. The trail, a completely different end of the spectrum. Across the summer months, big long races, maybe even ultras or 20-mile events, even 10-mile events. Take your time, run the hills slowly, enjoy it. They can be much more about adventures. They can be much more fun in a completely different way. But they can really help us build strength for a winter season. They can help us build strength that's going to come in useful for the next round of marathon training. They can build strength for what's going to come a year, 2 years down the line. So if you're thinking of progressing in the marathon or progressing into ultra, then trails is a really good place to go in the summer. It's also a completely different stimulus, so you're not at it hard the whole time. You're going to take some of it, run some of it at kind of a thresholdy pace, but some of it you're going to take it easy because it's uphill or the terrain's tricky or because there's no one around you and you can just coast and enjoy it. And you can enjoy races for different reasons. You can obviously race to win, or you can race to enjoy the environment. You can race in teams. Often the trail races come with a team element, so that can be fun. There's loads of trail races all across the southeast, easily accessible by train, and makes for a great day out across the summer. The middle ground in all of that is the road season in the summer. So there isn't, after the Hackney Half, there doesn't tend to be too many longer distance races across the summer months until probably the big half in September. There is 5k racing to be had, particularly in places like Battersea Park, even Victoria Park as well, where they're fast, they're evening races, it tends to be a little bit cooler, you can go and have a bit of fun doing that. And sequentially, you might think, right, I've done a marathon or I've done something like a marathon, I'm going to focus now on 5k for a little period of time, and then I'm going to move up into, once I've cracked that, I'm going to move to the 10k, once I've cracked that, I'm going to go to the half marathon, potentially building up to a marathon. So as a sequence of events, it can work quite nicely to go, right, and just do some road stuff in the summer. Time trialing, just seeing how I go. The one thing you'll need to bear in mind in all of this racing is temperatures. So if it is warm, it's going to affect your performance. But you might find that you have a day where the temperature cools as the evening descends, and it's actually really good conditions to run really fast. And a lot of it, for me, is about identifying when those moments are and knowing, right, I feel good today, the weather's good, today's my day. I'm going to really give this 5k PB a crack, and I'm going to work really hard and see what I can achieve. The one thing I always say to people about the 5k is it's kilometres 3 and 4 which make them all the difference in a 5k race. In a 5k race, we often go off a bit too quick, and that's sort of okay, but as long as you manage yourself. But you're feeling good for the first 2 kilometres, feeling relatively fresh, you're running fast, you've got people around you running a similar pace, the adrenaline's rushing. Get to 3 and 4 and it goes, it's starting to feel a little bit hard, but I'm nowhere near the end, relatively speaking. I'm going to sort of back off a little bit because I'm worried about what's going to come, or I start to doubt myself. But actually, if you can hold on to your pace in 3 and 4, kilometre 5 takes care of itself because it's over in a flash. And you'd be surprised by how much you can get from yourself in that final kilometre, especially if you're getting close to whatever it is you're trying to achieve. But you'll only get there if you can concentrate on holding your pace in 3 and 4. So something I usually say to people is, imagine the race is going to finish at 4 kilometres, not at 5 kilometres. Focus on getting to the end of 4 kilometres on pace, and then let the last kilometre take care of itself. You might unravel, but at least you've given it a shot. The worst thing that you see this a lot, is people have really good 1 and 2, 3 and 4 drop off, and then they find something for kilometre 5, and then they go, so I probably could have done more there. I just didn't believe in the middle, or I didn't concentrate in the middle, and it got hard. So for me, that's the secret, if there is such a thing, of racing the 5k. Now, the other thing that I think is interesting in all of this is there's loads of things there. You've got trail, track, road. And having said that, we've got all this long summer from May to September, it's actually only about 16, 17 weeks. It's not a very long period of time. There's a lot going on. You've probably got loads of other things in your life as well. It is really easy in the summer months to suffer from what I call goal creep. Where you go, oh, I'd quite like to do the mile, but I'd like to do that 50k ultra. And I want a PB in both, or I win that ultra and I want to run a 4:30 mile. Yeah, okay, to do both is going to be pretty hard to do. I mean, it's not impossible, especially for you because you're in great form. But I think we have to really be conscious of being too greedy in the summer. And I quite like it when people are focused. And it doesn't mean you have to be focused to the detriment of everything else. And you can still enjoy doing a rounded bunch of things. But in terms of what your priorities are, I think try and be super clear about what they are and know what benefit they're going to have for you, or what you're at least trying to do short term and long term. Because I think if you try and do too much and your goals start to kind of blend into each other, then you end up in the worst of all worlds, probably not achieving your best in any of them, and maybe even getting yourself injured along the way. So that's something to really think about as we go through from here. And the summer months, I think, are probably well defined now by the kind of the bookended by the marathon stroke the Hackney half through to the big half in early September, the first weekend of September. But again, it comes around fast, right? So that's the first week of September. To train properly for that, you probably need at least 6 to 8 weeks. So that's all of August, all of July. So you've got from now until the end of June to do other stuff, which is like 6 weeks. So we haven't got huge amounts of time. So if you've got half an eye on what's happening in the autumn, I think there's strong evidence that if you're looking at a marathon and you're a reasonably well-trained athlete, you will perform better in the autumn marathon than you typically do in the spring. That's not universally true, obviously, because there's loads of reasons why people do or don't perform well. But I think for people who take their running seriously, they are more accustomed to, prepared to, disciplined around training in the summer, and then they benefit from running a race in cooler conditions than the other way around, which is obviously in the winter we train hard through January, February, and this year March when it's freezing cold, and then we have a hot race in April. And it's in the spring, it's always going to be warmer on race day than it is than the temperatures you've been training in, and usually it's the other way around for the autumn. So you get yourself conditioned to training in the heat, and then you run in the cool, and you run better as a result, often. So just keep that in your mind as you're going through the summer, that there is potential for you to make significant gains just from training in the heat alone, and use that as an opportunity for yourself to propel yourself forward. But that doesn't mean we have to do hardcore marathon training through the summer, but to an extent, I think some of those components that we talk about in marathon training can be really useful, particularly July, August time, before we move into sort of October, November marathons. So keep the long term in mind. And that's what I say about runners wishing our lives away. We're already thinking about October, November when it's May. That's just the nature of being a runner, really. It always makes me kind of smile because we are often, we're doing it through training blocks. So we're thinking, all right, I'm going to get my next race. My next big race is in November, or it's Valencia in December, or whatever it is. I think, okay, so I've got that to look forward to. I'm going to get through this training block. So I've already wished my 3 or 4 months away there. But actually in our runs, we're like, oh, I want this to be over now. I want to get home. We're wishing our lives away there as well. So we're quite a unique bunch from that perspective. So yeah, that was it really for today. So I just wanted to summarise a little bit about the spring marathons in London in particular. I know it was also sort of true in Manchester, that it was a bit warm. Little break, how to reset, how to rethink, think about track or trail or road, depending on what you think you want to work on for the longer term, but also to an extent the shorter term. Think about how this is going to progress towards your autumn, and make sure you don't try and do everything all at once. Cool, thank you. Does anyone have any questions? So, I mean, I think you can do quite a lot in London that beyond that you think. So the Hampstead Heath is a really good place to go for the trails and the elevation. Epping Forest is another. It's not too far away on the Central Line. You can even go to Greenwich Park and do good work there. I think it's entirely possible to do it. It's just going to require a little bit of effort and time management to get out. I think we all convince ourselves that London's super flat, and I think where we are now and to the east it is, but to the north and to the south it's actually pretty hilly in places, and you can get quite a lot of good work in across a relatively small geographical area. And there's plenty of people who live in London who do very well at trail running. So yeah, don't let it be a barrier. But definitely get off the canal. Those little, the locks don't count as hills. Well, a bit of both, but to be focused on a single event. So if it's rare that anyone goes, right, this summer I want to just do the mile. People usually will say, I'd like to do some mile racing, do some 5K racing, maybe a 10K later in the summer. That's sort of typical thought. If you're going to go specific on the mile, and even to an extent the 5K, you want to continue with interval sessions, obviously. With the mile, you want to do some shorter, sharper interval sessions. So do 200s, 300s, even maybe even some 100s, just to get your legs going a little bit quicker. For 5K, standard interval sessions would work well, but in both those things, you still need tempo work, you still need a little bit of threshold. Unlike the marathon, where you might be doing 45 minutes of tempo running, you could probably, you don't need to do much more than 20 to 25 minutes for either of those two races, because what it's about is working your lactate threshold for the duration of the race that you're likely to run. So doing much more than 20 minutes for a 5K is not really particularly beneficial. And then outside of that, so typically for if you're marathon training, you might do 3 sessions a week. So you might do a Tuesday intervals, Thursday tempo, Sunday long run, nice standard marathon metric. For shorter distance stuff, you might do 4, or you might add in other stuff. So you might go standard interval session, some hill reps, some strides, and a threshold session, something like that. So on easy days, you might want to run shorter distances, but then throw some strides in at the end, or some short hill sprints, just to get things going. So just try and change it up a little bit. You can definitely mix it up, and you can make mile race part of your 5K training as well. And there is something to be said for racing frequently as a means of training as well. Not necessarily trying to be at your best every single time you race, but knowing that actually if you are going to race, it's going to have a positive effect down the line. And to your point, it would depend very much on who you are and what's going on, but you can probably do a couple of races a month throughout the summer of those distances and move from 5K to 10K and back again. Because obviously if you run a 10K well, then the theory is you might be able to run a 5K well as well. Yeah, I think that's a really valuable thing to do, particularly in the last few weeks as it's starting to get warmer, so wear more layers and you end up turning on your heat responders more quickly. Something else that people have started doing a lot of, which I think is making quite a big difference, is saunas. So just generally through your life, go use the sauna, and then because it helps stimulate your heat adaptation system, i.e. it makes you sweat, and sweating is good because it helps cool you down. But some people do it after a run, so you go for a hard run and then go straight to the sauna to try and kind of replicate what it might be like to run in the heat and how you might be feeling. So that seems to be working for quite a few people. A few people who I know ran London well utilised that as a technique, even though they didn't know it was going to be hot, obviously. I would, because I think when we're marathon training, we obsess over mileage, and we'd like to see our Strava bars, don't we? Like either nice and even or going up. I think the summer's a good time to forget about all of that stuff and do the sessions that you think are going to work. A long run of no more than 90 minutes to an hour and 45. Don't need any more than that. You're starting to go into proper long run if you go beyond that, and then let everything else take care of itself. If you feel like a recovery run's going to be 4 miles today, fine, it's 4 miles. If it's 6 miles today, fine, it's 6 miles. Whatever feels right for you. I think it's a good opportunity just to learn and teach yourself, both your body and your brain, that it's not just all about volume, particularly over the short distances. And know, especially if you've trained for the marathon, because you know you've got that in you, you've got that block of long volume that sits there. So it can be tempting to go, oh yeah, but I want my mileage at the end of the year to be 2,000 or whatever the number is, and to sort of chase that. I would urge people not to do that. And I think, for that, to that point, sometimes the technology and the measurement of stuff can be unhelpful to us as athletes. That's my personal view. So don't obsess about it is the answer to the question. But you can probably afford quite a lot less, basically, is the reality. So this might help you. I don't think it's as bad as people make it out to be. from a impact upon your training perspective, assuming it's in moderation. I mean, obviously, you know, there's times in the summer where we do want to go out and enjoy ourselves, and that's fine as well. It's just doing it a lot, I think, becomes the problem. I think one of the best beers, personally speaking, of the summer is the post-training run beer. It's just a great experience, isn't it? You don't have to have 10. One would do.
Depends how big your PB is.
That's true. And it's a nice experience, it's a nice thing to have. And I'm not going to go as far as to say it's a treat and a reward for the effort you've put in. But if you want to, you know, enjoy your summer as well as train hard as an athlete, don't force yourself not to. But equally, now remember that it's warm. So if you are going to have lots of beers and then you want to do something the following day, just remember you're going to be super dehydrated quite quickly. So make sure you're looking after yourself from that perspective. So yeah, you can enjoy a beer or two, I think. Yeah, and you're walking into one of my beefs of life, which is we've got an obsession with time. You know, the London Marathon, the only question you get asked in the days afterwards is, what's your time, what's your time, what's your time, what's your time? And that's how people want to measure you. And it's also how we learn to measure ourselves. And when you look at people like Keely Hodgkinson, you think, I mean, does anyone know how far she runs the 100 metres? But she won a gold medal. That's the thing that you remember. You don't remember what time she ran it in. She won the race. She won the Olympics. And I think we've forgotten that part of our sport. We've become so obsessed with, frankly, social media, reporting on how we've performed, attaching our self-worth to the number of likes we get, the kudos we get on Strava, all that sort of stuff, that we've forgotten the bit about the really fun bit, which is a foot race against somebody else of a similar ability on a single day. It's just the most amazing thing when you're in it, and it's the best thing about watching the sport on TV. And that, it's your point, is an opportunity that you can have yourself on the track. The slight challenge to that is sometimes you turn up at the track and everyone's either way better than you or way worse than you, and you're stuck. You're running your own time trial because of the nature of the competition in the field. But if you can find races where you know people are going to be a similar standard or they're seeded in the right way, it can be so much fun. You know, trying to do a sprint finish down the last 100 metres against somebody else who you never met before, don't even know, whatever. It's brilliant. One of the best bits of our sport that we've completely hide. Thanks very much. Thanks for all your questions. Next time we've got the next three actually is worth touching on. The next one is going to be about running economy. So that is not how our physiology works. It's about how we get the most out of our physiology. So we're going to talk about that, how to improve your performance, partly by running mechanics, but also by doing other things to make yourself more economical as an athlete. The one after that is going to be about age groups and thinking about the aging athlete. And that doesn't mean old, it means we're all aging and the things to think about as we're getting older. And then the one after that is going to be about the female athlete and what different things women need to think about than men to optimise their performance. And there's a lot, as the women in the room will know. Brilliant. Thanks very much.